Being nice is often confused with being kind, but they are not the same. Being nice is usually about being agreeable, being quiet, being accommodating, shaping yourself into whatever version keeps the peace and makes everyone else feel comfortable. But kindness, real, divine kindness, comes from truth, strength, and alignment with who you were created to be. Many women have been conditioned from childhood to soften themselves, to suppress their voice, to avoid conflict at all costs, to give more than they receive, to overextend emotionally, and to call it humility. But what looks like humility on the surface is often self-betrayal underneath. It is shrinking so others can feel big. It is silencing yourself so others don't feel threatened. It is carrying emotional weight that was never yours to carry. And at some point you hear a whisper in your spirit saying, this is not what you were created for. Being nice often means molding yourself into the expectations of others. You learn to say yes when your soul is begging you to say no. You learn to smile while suppressing your frustration. You learn to prioritize others' comfort over your own peace. You learn to carry responsibilities that drain you because you fear disappointing someone. And you begin to measure your worth by how much you can tolerate. That's not kindness. That's exhaustion disguised as virtue. Kindness does not require self-sacrifice to the point of depletion. Kindness is not bending until you break. True kindness honors both others and yourself. When God tells you to stop being a nice girl, it's not a call to become harsh or unloving. It's a call to step into authenticity. It's a call to stop betraying yourself for approval. It's a call to stop dimming your light because someone else's insecurity can't handle your brightness. Being nice keeps you small, but being aligned with your purpose elevates you. It empowers you to be honest, to be firm, to be courageous, to be decisive. When you choose alignment over niceness, you start hearing your intuition more clearly. You start noticing where you've been abandoning your own needs. You start recognizing the spaces where you've allowed others to take advantage of your gentle heart. Niceness often creates cycles where you give without boundaries. You attract people who take more than they offer. You find yourself in relationships where your emotional labor is expected but never appreciated. You become the fixer, the rescuer, the dependable one who everyone turns to but few pour into. When God calls you out of that role, He is calling you back to balance. He is reminding you that your heart was not designed to be stretched endlessly. You were not created to be a container for everyone else's crisis. You were created with purpose, with intention, with a calling that requires your energy, your strength, and your full presence. You cannot fulfill that calling while living as the nice girl who constantly puts herself last. Being aligned with your purpose means you stop tolerating environments that drain your spirit. You begin to recognize when something no longer resonates with your growth. You start making decisions based on clarity rather than guilt. You begin to choose peace over people pleasing. This is not selfishness, this is spiritual responsibility. When you honor your calling, you honor the one who gave it to you. Being nice is about avoiding discomfort. Being aligned is about embracing truth, even when truth requires change. Being nice keeps you in situations that no longer serve you. Being aligned pulls you toward the life you were meant to live. When a woman stops being nice and starts being aligned, her entire energy shifts. She stops apologizing for her standards. She stops negotiating her boundaries. She stops trying to convince people of her worth. She starts saying no without guilt. She starts speaking with authority. She starts walking with clarity. She starts seeing the difference between what drains her and what fuels her. And because of that shift, she begins attracting people, opportunities, and experiences that reflect her new level of self-respect. Nice girls are loved for what they give. Aligned women are valued for who they are. Nice girls avoid conflict. Aligned women embrace conversations that lead to growth. Nice girls seek approval. Aligned women seek purpose. Nice girls shrink. Aligned women expand. And when you expand, when you step into the fullness of who you are, you begin to understand why God never intended for you to stay small to make others comfortable. There comes a moment when you realize that staying nice is costing you far more than it is protecting you. It costs you your voice. It costs you your confidence. It costs you your dreams. It costs you your identity. And eventually, it costs you your purpose. But when you choose alignment, when you honor your truth, when you allow yourself to be the woman you were created to be, you begin living with a level of confidence and clarity that niceness could never give you. Your destiny is not something that waits politely for you to feel ready. It does not tiptoe around your insecurities or ask you if you're comfortable. Destiny is a force that requires movement, courage, and a willingness to step into the unknown without waiting for someone else to tell you it's okay. Many women live their lives on pause because they're waiting for approval from family, partners, society, mentors, or people who may never understand the magnitude of what they carry inside. They shrink themselves, not because they lack ability, but because they've been conditioned to believe they need permission to rise. But what you carry was never designed to be submitted for approval. It was designed to be lived. Strength is not loud or aggressive. It is the inner conviction that allows you to walk forward even when no one claps for you. It is the understanding that what God placed inside you is bigger than the fears that try to keep you small. Waiting for validation becomes a cage, a limitation that keeps your gifts dormant. You start second-guessing your intuition, questioning your ideas, minimizing your creativity, and silencing your voice just to avoid disapproval. But your destiny cannot unfold in silence. It cannot bloom in hesitation. It cannot grow in the shadow of someone else's expectations. There will always be people who underestimate you. There will always be people who doubt your capabilities or fail to see your potential. But their doubt is not your direction. Their opinion is not your blueprint. If you wait for people to confirm what God already told you, you will delay your purpose for years. Some will only support you once the vision is already successful. Some will only recognize your strength once you've already pushed through alone. Some will only believe in you once you stop waiting for their belief. That's why permission cannot be the fuel for your calling. Permission keeps you stagnant. Strength moves you. Your destiny requires that you step out of the nice girl role that seeks approval before taking action. That version of you wants everyone to be comfortable with your journey. She wants no one to be offended, intimidated, or threatened by her growth. But growth often disrupts comfort. When you step into who you were meant to be, you will outgrow people, places, and patterns. You will feel the tension between who you were taught to be and who you are destined to become. That tension is not a sign to shrink, it's a sign to move. Strength means choosing your calling over other people's comfort. It means recognizing that you cannot carry out your purpose while editing yourself to please the world. Sometimes you have to move even when your voice shakes. You have to speak even when you feel unprepared. You have to trust your inner guidance even when others don't understand. Strength is the divine permission you've been waiting for, the inner green light that says go anyway. People may not support you at first, but the path will support you once you take the step. Your destiny will require you to set boundaries with the people who try to keep you in old versions of yourself. Some will prefer the you who was agreeable, the you who was always available, the you who didn't challenge anything, the you who didn't dream too loudly. But staying that version may make them comfortable while it suffocates you. Your destiny needs the version of you who is bold enough to say, I'm moving forward whether you understand it or not. This is not rebellion, it is obedience to the calling on your life. When you stop waiting for permission, you start accessing opportunities that were always meant for you. Doors begin to open because you finally stepped toward them. Ideas begin to flourish because you finally gave them space. Confidence begins to grow because you stop outsourcing it. Strength comes from action, not approval. Every decision you make from a place of self-belief is a seed planted in your destiny, and each seed grows into the foundation of the life you were meant to live. When you realize your destiny requires strength, something shifts inside you. You stop apologizing for dreaming big. You stop feeling guilty for wanting more. You stop dimming your abilities just to blend in. You stand with a new posture, a new clarity, a new conviction that says, I will not live small. And in that moment, you feel the truth settle into your spirit. Your destiny was never waiting for someone else to say yes. It was waiting for you. Boundaries are not walls meant to keep people out. They are spiritual laws that protect the purpose within you. A boundary is a declaration of your worth, a line drawn not from anger but from clarity. It is a decision to no longer abandon yourself in order to satisfy others. Many women who live in nice girl mode struggle with boundaries because they were taught that saying no makes them difficult, ungrateful, or unkind. They were conditioned to believe that good women absorb everyone's needs, carry everyone's burdens, and say yes even when their spirit is exhausted. But a life without boundaries becomes a life without balance. It becomes a life where everyone gets access to you except you. A boundary is a divine form of self-respect. It is acknowledging that your time, your energy, your peace, and your emotional capacity are valuable resources, not open reservoirs for anyone to take from. Without boundaries, your spirit becomes drained. You begin to feel bitterness resentment, or quiet frustration, not because you lack love, but because you have given beyond what is healthy. Boundaries are not selfish. They are necessary for your spiritual and emotional survival. They make it possible for your purpose to thrive instead of suffocate under the weight of constant giving. When God calls you to stop being a nice girl, He is calling you to set boundaries that honor the path you're walking. Because every step toward your destiny requires energy. Every goal demands focus. Every calling requires strength. And when your energy is scattered, when you're saying yes to things that drain you, to people who misuse your kindness, you begin to sabotage the very purpose you are trying to fulfill. Boundaries help you conserve your strength so that you can pour into what actually matters. They filter out the distractions disguised as obligations. They help you differentiate between what is healthy for your soul and what is harmful to your growth. Boundaries also teach others how to value you. If you're always available, always accommodating, always bending, people learn to take your presence for granted. They learn to expect the version of you that never says no. And over time, that expectation becomes a burden you carry alone. But when you begin setting boundaries, you shift the dynamic. You teach people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. When you respect your time, others learn to respect it. When you honor your emotional limits, others learn to honor them. When you say no without guilt, others learn that your yes is meaningful and not a default response. Some people will resist your boundaries, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because they benefited from your lack of them. They were comfortable with the version of you who tolerated too much, who gave without limits, who accepted behavior that drained your spirit. When you finally decide to draw a line, they may accuse you of changing. But that change is not a betrayal, it is an elevation. It is a sign that you love yourself enough to stop participating in your own exhaustion. It is a sign that you are stepping into the woman God intended you to be. Setting boundaries requires courage because it forces you to confront the fear of disappointing people. It forces you to examine why you felt responsible for everyone else's comfort. It forces you to acknowledge the places where you have minimized your needs in order to maintain relationships that were never meant to depend on your self-sacrifice. Boundaries strip away the illusion that you must earn love through overgiving. They remind you that love rooted in dependence is not love. It is emotional imbalance. Boundaries are spiritual discipline. They are the guardrails that protect your purpose from being diluted by unnecessary commitments or toxic connections. They help you stay aligned with your calling by ensuring that your energy is directed toward what nourishes your soul. When you begin setting boundaries, you start noticing a shift in your life. You begin feeling lighter. You begin thinking more clearly. You begin hearing your intuition more loudly. You begin experiencing peace where chaos once lived. And that peace is a sign that your spirit is finally being honored. Saying no becomes easier when you understand that every no is also a yes. A yes to your mental health. A yes to your rest. A yes to your purpose. A yes to your emotional clarity. A yes to the woman you are becoming. Boundaries are not barriers to love, they are expressions of it. They protect you from being depleted, they protect your relationships from resentment, and they protect your heart from being stretched beyond its capacity. When a woman learns to set boundaries, she stops being controlled by guilt. She stops being manipulated by expectations. She stops feeling obligated to carry what others refuse to take responsibility for. She becomes grounded, centered, and strong. She walks with a quiet authority that comes from knowing her worth and honoring it. And in that strength, she discovers the truth that God never intended for her to be a nice girl. He intended for her to be a whole woman. A wise woman, a powerful woman, a woman who knows the value of her yes and the sacredness of her no. You are not called to carry everyone, and the moment you finally allow that truth to settle into your spirit, a weight begins to lift from your life. Many women grow up believing it is their responsibility to hold everything together, to fix the broken pieces in other people's lives, to absorb others' pain, to be the emotional anchor in every relationship, to heal wounds they did not create, and to save people who have no intention of saving themselves. This belief feels noble, but it is actually a heavy burden disguised as duty. You were never meant to be everyone's rescue, everyone's solution, or everyone's emotional lifeline. Carrying people who refuse to rise is not compassion, it is captivity. And eventually, it keeps you from walking your own path. There is a difference between supporting someone and carrying them. Support is healthy. It empowers others to grow. Carrying, however, drains your spirit because you take on responsibilities that do not belong to you. When you constantly lift others, especially those who have the ability to lift themselves, you begin to lose your strength. You begin to lose your focus. You begin to lose sight of your own calling. Some people are not rising because they are incapable. Some are not rising because they have grown comfortable leaning on your strength. And the more you carry them, the more they depend on you, and the less they depend on themselves. When God tells you to stop being a nice girl, He is inviting you to step out of the role of rescuer. Because rescuing people who refuse to grow does not elevate them, it diminishes you. You cannot fulfill your purpose while dragging people who are committed to staying in the same place. You cannot walk into your divine assignment while holding on to people who fight to remain in dysfunction. You cannot ascend while trying to pull others upward when they have planted their feet firmly in comfort or chaos. There are people who will gladly let you carry them for years if it means avoiding their own growth. Not because they're bad people, but because it's easier to borrow your strength than to cultivate their own. Some women feel obligated to carry others out of guilt. They think, if I don't help them, who will? Or what if they can't make it without me? But that is not your burden to bear. You are not their source. You are not their savior. You are a vessel, not a replacement for the lessons they must learn on their own. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back and allow people to face the consequences of their choices. When you constantly step in to solve problems, you interfere with the growth that struggle would have developed in them. You shield them from the very experiences that were meant to strengthen them. There are people in your life who drain you not because they need help, but because they have grown accustomed to living off your energy. They depend on your emotional labor, your advice, your presence, your encouragement, your consistency, while offering very little in return. You think you're helping them, but slowly you realize you're enabling their stagnation. You're postponing their growth. You're strengthening their dependency. The nice girl in you wants to keep giving, keep helping, keep carrying, but the wiser version of you understands that constantly carrying others eventually causes you to collapse. Letting go of the urge to carry everyone is not abandonment, it is alignment. It is choosing to walk your path without being weighed down by responsibilities that were never assigned to you. It is recognizing that everyone has their own journey, their own lessons, their own timing, and their own choices. You can love people deeply without sacrificing yourself for them. You can support without overextending. You can guide without assuming control. You can care without allowing that care to consume you. Carrying others often stems from an internal fear, the fear of being seen as unkind, unhelpful, or uncaring. But there is nothing unkind about preserving your emotional strength. There is nothing selfish about creating room for your own growth. There is nothing wrong with stepping back and allowing people to experience the growth that comes through responsibility. You were not designed to be the backbone of every relationship. You were not created to be the emotional healer for every person who crosses your path. You were created with purpose, with vision, with gifts that need space to breathe and develop. When a woman stops carrying everyone, she begins to reclaim her energy. Her mind becomes clearer. Her spirit becomes lighter. Her purpose becomes louder. She starts to realize how much time and emotional bandwidth she had been giving away to situations that did not contribute to her growth. She begins to see that her destiny requires her presence, her focus, her strength, not the scattered remnants left after carrying everyone else's load. And from that clarity, a new version of her begins to rise, stronger, wiser, grounded, and no longer willing to sacrifice her calling in the name of being nice. Your voice is not just sound. It is a spiritual instrument, a tool designed to shape your environment and define your reality. Too many women have been conditioned to mute themselves, to hesitate before speaking truth, to whisper where they were meant to declare, and to ask for permission before expressing what they already know within. They shrink their voice to avoid being labeled difficult, emotional, demanding, or too much. They choose silence because silence seems safe. But silence is costly when it comes at the expense of your identity. You were not created to navigate life quietly. You were created to speak with clarity, authority, and conviction. Your voice carries power because it carries purpose. Your voice becomes powerful the moment you stop apologizing for it. Apologizing for your strength, apologizing for your boundaries, apologizing for your standards, apologizing for your needs. These habits weaken your inner authority. When you speak with uncertainty, you teach others to doubt you. When you minimize your truth, you teach others to overlook you. When you speak softly to accommodate someone else's insecurities, you teach your own spirit to stay small. But when you reclaim your voice, when you allow your inner truth to rise without fear, you shift your entire atmosphere. You create new opportunities, new relationships, and new levels of respect simply by speaking as though you believe in who you are. Your voice is a divine tool, one that commands direction and declares identity. It is not meant to be filtered through the expectations of others. It is not meant to be silenced by worry about how people perceive you. When you speak, you're not just communicating thoughts, you're establishing boundaries, affirming your worth, and aligning with the woman you're becoming. Your words carry authority because they carry alignment. When you speak from your truth, you speak from your spiritual core. And that type of speech does not waver, even when others misunderstand it. Too many women have been taught to fear their own voice because they were raised to believe that softness is the only acceptable version of femininity. But strength has a sound too. Strength is found in the woman who says no without explaining herself. Strength is found in the woman who speaks up when something is wrong. Strength is found in the woman who expresses her needs instead of hoping they will magically be met. Strength is found in the woman who stands in her truth even when her truth makes others uncomfortable. This kind of strength does not destroy it, clarifies it, empowers, it liberates. Your voice also reveals your identity. When you speak timidly, it means you are still questioning your own worth. When you speak boldly, it means you are finally stepping into alignment. Your voice exposes your inner belief system. If you believe you are powerful, your voice will reflect it. If you believe you are worthy, your voice will express it. If you believe your calling is real, your words will declare it without hesitation. This is why silence is dangerous, not because speaking loudly is always necessary, but because silence often becomes a habit of self-erasure. And when you erase yourself, you create room for others to define you. Taking authority over your voice means letting go of the fear of being misunderstood. Not everyone will agree with your decisions. Not everyone will celebrate your clarity. Not everyone will support your boundaries. But their discomfort is not your burden. When you speak with authority, you speak from a place of internal alignment rather than external acceptance. You stop tailoring your truth to fit the expectations of people who were never meant to guide your destiny. You stop shrinking your expressions to keep others comfortable. You stop softening your voice to avoid being seen as bold. You embrace the fullness of who you are, and your voice becomes the vehicle that carries you into the life you're meant to live. Your voice also protects you. It guards your peace. It shields your boundaries. It breaks cycles. It disrupts manipulation. It clarifies misunderstandings before they have the chance to grow. When you speak up, you eliminate ambiguity. You prevent others from defining your intentions. You create emotional order. A woman who speaks clearly is a woman who cannot be easily controlled. A woman who communicates her truth is a woman who cannot be easily dismissed. A woman who commands her voice is a woman who commands her life. When you use your voice with authority, you begin to attract environments where your truth is valued rather than tolerated. You draw in relationships where communication is mutual. You inspire respect in people who once took your silence as weakness. You step into leadership roles because confidence flows through your words. You stop being the woman who waits to be chosen and become the woman who chooses herself. Your voice is a gift, a weapon, a compass, and a doorway. And when you learn to use it with unwavering authority, you step out of the nice girl identity and into the powerful woman you were created to be. Transformation begins the moment you stop apologizing for the power that has always lived inside you. For years, many women have been taught to dim their light, to make others comfortable, to suppress their ambition so they don't seem intimidating, to hold back their brilliance so they don't outshine anyone, and to shrink their presence to fit into spaces that were never designed to hold the fullness of who they are. The nice girl identity is built on the idea that being agreeable is more important than being authentic, that blending in is safer than standing out, and that staying quiet is easier than owning your strength. But real transformation unfolds when you decide that your power is not something to hide, it is something to honor. There comes a moment in every woman's life when she begins to feel a deep internal shift, a whisper that says you're not living as your highest self. That whisper grows louder over time. It nudges you when you settle for less. It pulls at you when you silence your intuition. It stirs in you when you ignore opportunities that were meant for your growth. And eventually that whisper becomes a truth you can no longer avoid. You cannot step into the woman you are destined to be while still operating from the mindset of the girl who was afraid to disappoint people. Transformation requires letting go of the patterns that kept you small. It requires confronting the fear of being seen, being heard, being powerful. When you stop apologizing for your power, you reclaim your identity. You stop seeking permission for your dreams. You stop over-explaining your decisions. You stop minimizing your achievements to avoid making others uncomfortable. You walk with a new level of clarity and self-assurance because you finally understand that your power is not arrogance, it is alignment. You are simply stepping into the woman you were always meant to be. And once you step into that identity, you cannot go back to pretending you're less capable, less gifted, or less worthy than you truly are. Many women fear their own power because they've been taught that being powerful means being harsh, unfeminine, or too assertive. But true power is not about control, it is about consciousness. It is the awareness of your worth, the confidence in your purpose, and the courage to walk boldly in your truth. Power does not destroy, it elevates. It elevates your thinking, your decisions, your relationships, and your standards. When you stop apologizing for your power, you stop tolerating what drains you. You stop accepting relationships that undermine your value. You stop participating in environments where your voice is ignored. You rise, and everything in your life begins to adjust accordingly. Transformation becomes possible when you recognize that your comfort zone is too small for the woman you are becoming. The nice girl identity lives inside the comfort zone, avoiding risk, avoiding confrontation, avoiding visibility, but your power lives outside of that space. It calls you to expand, to stretch, to evolve, to be uncomfortable long enough to grow. You begin to realize that discomfort is not a sign of danger, it is a confirmation that you are stepping into new territory. You begin to see that the life you want will require you to release the identity that made you easy to handle but difficult to fulfill. As you embrace your power, you start making decisions from a place of self-belief rather than self-doubt. You start centering your own needs instead of constantly accommodating others. You begin to protect your energy, prioritize your purpose, and invest in your development. Your vision becomes clearer because you no longer filter it through fear. Your intuition becomes stronger because you no longer silence it. Your voice grows more confident because you no longer question its value. Transformation does not happen overnight, but it begins the moment you decide that shrinking is no longer an option. People around you may not understand the changes at first. Some will question why you're suddenly setting boundaries. Some will accuse you of changing. Some will try to pull you back into the version of yourself that made their lives easier. But you will feel within your spirit that you are moving in the right direction. You will feel lighter because you're no longer carrying the weight of others' expectations. You will feel stronger because you're finally drawing from your own inner truth instead of the approval of others. You will feel grounded because you're finally rooted in your purpose. As this transformation unfolds, you begin to see that your power was never the problem. The problem was the fear attached to it. Once you release the fear, your power becomes a source of clarity, confidence, and direction. You start walking differently. You start thinking differently. You start choosing differently. You stop living reactively and begin living intentionally. And in that intentionality, you uncover the strength, resilience, and brilliance that were always inside you, waiting for the moment you decided to stop apologizing and start becoming.